Okay. Now it's going to be great. CascadiaJS, yeah! So Willow Brugh is aware of many hats. She's involved with the MIT's Center for Civic Media, Geeks Without Bounds, and she's often presenting to folks who are using technology, or in the case of the InfoSec community, trying to break technology. And that's why we're really lucky to have her here to keynote CascadiaJS 2014. Everybody give a hand for Willow. Who I did not realize was still working on her display settings. So now I'm like, okay, now, no.
So I might have just killed everything. I'm trying to live stream for people that are not able to be here. But let's do this. Hey, look at all of the things that I try to hide from everyone ever. That's cool. Please don't crash. It's going to be funny because this immediately relates to my opening statement, which is that what we plan for is never what actually happens. Thank you. That just happened. I actually didn't expect that. So this is in relationship to disaster and humanitarian response, which is what I do most of the time. And that is, for example, if you are a fire department and you have 12 trucks and you have 20 guys and girls, men and women, in a false dichotomy of gender. Okay, cool. If you do a scenario for everybody to train, you're going to really push their ability. But it's still going to be within what is physically and mentally possible for them to do. The thing is, fires don't care what you trained for, right? And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is how we deal with this difference in technology in an inclusive way. This is a comic I insist upon showing everyone so that you sort of understand my humor. Which is A Softer World, and says, people helping people in the aftermath of tragedy is the only really convincing argument for people, with the mouse over of always in the shadow of a stronger argument against. Like, quiet desperation. Okay. This is me, you can tell by the hair. I posted a link to this Prezi, and also if you want to do Q&A, I have the Google Hangout Q&A going on, because I don't think we actually have a mic to run around. So if you want to join in there, that's cool. And I'm going to talk to you today about technology as a means to equality. But even though it's just me on this stage, there are an awful lot of people that I have the honor and privilege of working with on a regular basis. Here are some of them, the Geeks Without Bounds team. This is Rosalind of Arden, Leisha, with her Twitter handle, Diggs. I also get to hang out at the Center for Civic Media and the Berkman Center. And these are some great groups that I really spend a lot of time with. So props to them, they're amazing. But all of the things that we do are into one purpose, which this is bleeding off the edge, but that's cool. We're just gonna play with it. To one purpose, and that's equality. And so in anything that we build, we ask, who are the most marginalized people who might use this? And if we can include them in our plan, it will probably work for everyone else. And in that question of, is it possible to perform mutual aid at a global scale? What's mutual aid? Mutual aid is the voluntary exchange of resources and services for a mutual benefit, also known as altruism. We have a term for it. So I'm going to tell you, within that one purpose, about 3 cities, and I'm going to give you 2 challenges. And the first one is a demonstration of what mutual aid can be like. So in New York City, when Sandy hit, this is how usually resource allocation happens. A bunch of unlabeled boxes show up from the government, from nonprofits, and just in donations. And they all show up, and you have to unbox everything into church rows if you're set up in a church or wherever else. And then you distribute it outward at your best guess as to who might need what where. And then people have to go to those places. This is what Occupy Sandy did. Because some people had connectivity, they just registered on a gift registry about what exactly they needed. And then people bought that for them directly. It's direct mutual aid. FedEx and UPS then shipped it directly to those people. We removed hours and hours of labor, of logistics that were then able to be spent on actually helping people directly. Does this make sense? Good? Cool. Okay. So this was about replacing the centralized component into logistics and a direct connection. Okay, another example. Port-au-Prince, Haiti. There is a group called Coalition of Victims for Victims, COVAVIV, and I went and facilitated a hackathon with them around this group, where it had been that they would just be somewhere and they would find people who had experienced gender-based violence, and they would talk to them about what clinics were around, what legal structures they needed to interact with, things like that. Then there was such a need that they set up a hotline where people could call in and say, I'm standing in this place. There are no addresses in Port-au-Prince, by the way, and so it's all done on, it was OpenStreetMap, so that you can have a wiki of references, so you can refer to the same place in many different ways, and people can also contribute to that. But it was still based upon people, the women working in the call center, being able to know where the person was standing and what was local. Does that make sense? So like, they're 3 blocks away, that means you need to go to this clinic within the next 4 days, etc. But then it was the only 24-hour free-to-call hotline. And so it gains a whole lot of traction, not just within that context, but also, I really like this girl, and I think she's underage, and I don't know what to do. Or, tell me about the safe sex thing. We want to know about that. And so people were calling in, and that meant that people who lived beyond the understanding or the geographical knowledge of the women in the call center were calling up, and they didn't know what was going on. In those locations. And so we brought an international team who taught methodology of hackathons to set up a private database, because it can't be open, because if you let people know where the battered women's shelters are, people show up and it's really bad. So having a private database that they could update, we had the women that worked in the call center paper prototype their user interface, and that's super fun with people who have never touched a computer before, to like explain a user interface and icons and make it fun. And then the students from the local technical college built out the platform using libraries we had never heard of. It was amazing, that worked in the low connectivity environment. Then through the school, they continued developing, deploying, and maintaining, and some of them now work for the call center. We could have built this in a weekend, as we like to say. Like, oh, I could have done that in a weekend. That's not the point. People need to be able to help themselves. So we were there to show solidarity, to perform mutual aid at a global scale. Cool so far? Good. So in this, the inclusion in the build is just as, if not more important as a functional tool or platform. So now we're going to go to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. It's in East Africa. And I'm going to try to drink some water, or coffee. Coffee also works. This is a water point. I know you can tell. So these water points, there's not a lot of water infrastructure in Tanzania. And while people are putting in normal piping, there are decentralized structures. So you have one place where you pour in a bunch of water and it kind of goes through these pipes, that most of which leak, to these things that are gravity enforced. So there's a pipe coming into this, and then this is a huge hundreds of gallon container. It's up high so that the gravity helps you feed into it. Oh, hey, thanks, water. And billions of dollars have been spent on this water infrastructure, and they keep installing water points. But they also keep breaking, and no one's doing any maintenance because nobody knows where all of them are. In theory, there's the Ministry of Water in Tanzania paid like 5 cartographers to basically walk across the country, and they logged where everything is, but that's a snapshot, right? That's not about what's working and what's not, and people install them without registering them, and it's a cluster. Second word foregone there. And so what we did was, when something breaks, most people have feature phones, not smartphones, so they can just text in that something is broken. That goes into a database that goes to a water engineer or anyone with a wrench who can then go fix it, report it as fixed. which also then updates the database. And then you end up with the exhaust of those interactions going into reports. So the people who live in an area, there are really easy printouts of what's been going on. So there were 5 fixes based upon there were 5 reports, we fixed 2 things based on those, and there's a 10-day wait in general. So then, even if the government is not responding, they still have a piece for advocacy. It also means that the Ministry of Water and other groups can see how they're doing to reach their goals. So it's bringing transparency within the process of data collection itself. And so in this, the data must be immediately useful to and usable by the population. Like there was a group that took, as far as right after the Haitian earthquake, there was a group called Lincoln Laboratory that did LiDAR. So you could see from planes, and so you could tell which buildings had collapsed, even though the roof was intact, because you could tell what the differentiation in height was. This is terabits of data, though, terabytes of data. And so it's not immediately useful to anyone in the field, and so why are you collecting it? Like, no one is able to use that. Just having the information for the sake of the information isn't good enough. It has to be useful to the people whom it affects. This is what makes us different than the NSA. Cool? Okay. Because I love tracking all of my stuff. I just want to decide who gets to see it. Okay. So these are the 3 cities within that one purpose. I'm now going to take you on 2 challenges. Yeah. And then I'll close out, basically. And so if you've had questions, either post them to Twitter or shout them, and we'll figure it out. I'm used to giving really short talks and doing a lot more interaction. But it's okay. All right, so 2 challenges. Oh, that's funny. All right, so one is the Tarifa water points. We're still building it out. There's a team in Dar es Salaam now that is maintaining it. There's an open source community there that is out of the innovation spaces that are learning how to code. But the trick is not just to be like, we know what's going on with this code, I'm going to fix this bug. It's like, what do these people need in order to be able to figure it out as well? And what can we learn from them? And so if you want to help out with that, that's awesome. The other one is Mozilla emergency badges. So you guys might know about the emergency or badges in general. This was not drawn at the same time, as you can tell by the different stick figures. So disasters are super messy. There are a bunch of people that are affected. And there are a whole bunch of organizations that are out there to help, which are terrible at coordinating themselves. And there are a lot of volunteers who show up with the responders. That did not go at the pace that I wanted it to. Sorry, just a sec. Okay, so what is planned for? So we know that in Northeast, people need soup. We give you a box of soup. Okay. And then when you run over and you're on your way to Northeast, either a road is out or someone needs soup more on the way, or when you get to Northeast, people have already gotten soup and they're eating soup, or nobody's there. Like, that's just the nature of it, because there's a disconnection, there's an asynchronicity between the vocalization of what a need is and the ability to deliver on it, because connectivity is so low, and we're not used to that with our cell phones. Like, oh, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, let's meet 2 blocks down instead, right? It's like 4 hours later, I don't know what's going on. And so you have to adapt in the moment, and in order to do that, we have to trust people more. But also not being able to deliver on your specific task means that there's a disconnection between the person who wants to help and the person who needs the help. And so and there are all sorts of weird PTSD for digital responders where you get all of these notifications of, oh my God, everything is on fire, please come help me, and then there's no response after you try to help. It's like, and so by doing this, where someone who is in the affected population can send an SMS or whatever else, it lets people know that they did help, and it also provides a credentialing which is external to an organization. So if you go from Red Cross over to FEMA over to Occupy, you can still be known for what it is you can do. So we're working on that as well, and the exhaust from that one will be to also build better plans, because you can build a report out of the interactions that we see there. Okay. I was going to tell you about a different challenge, but we always make sure that we can actually go to the place where people will be using the thing to do what's called co-design, which is where you interact with the people who will be using the tool to make sure that they understand what's going on with it and that it fulfills what their needs are. But one of them I wasn't positive of. So this is what it is to perform mutual aid at a global scale through technology. And this is me, and these are people, and these are more people. So Pablo plays serious games with people at the International Red Cross Climate Change Center, and so people who don't necessarily understand probability yet, or you always calculate things in line items, you're like, okay, you have 4 dice, one of them is your rainfall, and this one is the rainfall upstream, and if you get more than 10, you're flooded. Here are the beans that are your resources. Use them well. And you get people at the UN to play through these things, and they realize that their rule structures don't work. And then by iterating, they're like, wait a second, if we change this policy, it means that these things change. And, oh, this is so much better. And you're like, yes, roll the dice again. And then they actually change things, and it's beautiful. And I'm totally lucky to work with all of these people. If you want to help with code, that's amazing. If you want to give us money, that's also amazing. We don't exactly fit into traditional fundraising structures, so that's fun. Co-design toolkit, if you want to know how to better interact with people. And if you like my stick figures, this is where you can look at more of them. And that's what I've got.